Dawn in a silent mansion is shattered by a loud crash coming from inside the house. "Those presents belong to the girls," the employee whispers as she watches the stepmother destroy memories of the late mother. "I'm just freeing this family from the past," the woman replies, smashing everything with cold indifference. But when one of the children murmurs with tear-filled eyes, "Our new mother hates us," the silence turns into war. If you're intrigued by this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Now, on with the story. The dead of night in New York City carried that heavy silence that only exists when the city finally falls asleep. On Park Avenue, among skyscrapers and mansions protected by high walls, one house stood out for its size and the coldness of its modern architecture. There, in that glass and concrete structure, lived a family trying to piece itself back together after a loss no one could name out loud. Connie woke with a start. At 52, she had learned to distinguish the sounds of that house like a mother knows her child's breathing, and that crash wasn't normal. It wasn't the wind rattling a poorly shut window, nor the neighbor's dog knocking over trash cans on the street. It was something from inside, something deliberate and violent. She slipped on her slippers quickly and left her small room in the back, that tiny but tidy space where she had slept since arriving at the Thompson house 15 years ago. Her hurried footsteps echoed down the service hallway as another noise rang out, louder, followed by a muffled cry. It wasn't a cry of physical pain, but of something much worse, something she knew all too well after so many years working in the homes of the wealthy. It was the cry of someone being torn apart from the inside. When she reached the main living room, her feet froze at the entrance, and all the air fled her lungs. The Christmas tree was still up, its lights blinking in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, casting colorful reflections on the white walls. But what should have been a scene of celebration and warmth had been transformed into a silent battlefield. The floor was covered in torn paper, undone ribbons, pieces of broken toys, and shards of glass that glittered. Under the tree's lights, like fragments of fallen stars. In the center of it all stood Patricia Morgan, dressed in an elegant red silk outfit that contrasted obscenely with the violence of her actions. Her perfectly styled blonde hair swayed with each movement as she raised a heavy bronze candlestick, bringing it down with force against a gift box that had not yet been destroyed. The sound of the impact reverberated through the room like a gunshot. But that wasn't what broke Connie's heart. It was the scene in front of Patricia. 3 identical little girls were kneeling on the floor, so alike that even those who saw them daily sometimes got them confused. Anna Louise, Anna Claire, and Anna Julia were only 6 years old, and their round little faces still held the innocence of early childhood. But in that moment, with their eyes red and swollen, wearing matching unicorn pajamas, they seemed much smaller, much more fragile, as if they had shrunk in the face of hatred disguised as order. Anna Louise, always the most sensitive of the 3, clutched the remains of a rag doll to her chest. The doll's head hung to the side, half torn off, and one of its fabric arms was completely detached from its body. That doll had been the last gift Marina Thompson had given her daughter before she was gone. Marina, the mother who was no longer there, who had left a void so vast in the house that even the air seemed thinner. Anna Claire, normally the most fearless, was trying to piece together a music box with trembling hands. It played the lullaby Marina used to sing every night. The internal mechanisms were exposed, the gears bent, and the porcelain ballerina that danced on top lay broken in half. The girl pressed the pieces together as if the force of her will could fuse them back together. Anna Julia, the quietest of the triplets, was paralyzed, staring at a torn envelope from which several sheets of paper decorated with flower drawings had fallen. They were letters. Letters that Marina had written for each daughter, one for every birthday until they turned 18. Words of love, advice, stories from her own childhood, everything a mother who knew she wouldn't be there wanted to leave behind. Now those pages were scattered on the floor, some trampled, others torn, turned into trash. Patricia turned upon noticing Connie's presence, and the smile she offered was so cold it sent a shiver up the housekeeper's spine. It wasn't a smile of shame or embarrassment at being caught doing something terrible. It was the smile of someone in control, who knew exactly what she was doing and saw no problem with it. Good evening, Connie, Patricia said in a melodic voice that didn't match the scene at all. Or should I say good morning? Sorry about the noise. I was just doing some necessary cleaning. You know how it is, the house needs a refresh. The past can take up too much space, don't you think? Connie felt her throat tighten. She opened her mouth, tried to find words, but what could she say? This woman, who in a few short months had won Robert Thompson's trust and now acted like the lady of the house, was here in the middle of the night, purposefully destroying the last memories 3 motherless children had of the person who had loved them unconditionally. Ms. Morgan, with all due respect, Connie whispered, taking a step forward, those things belong to the girls. They're gifts their mother left them. They have a right to keep those memories. Patricia's smile vanished as if erased by an invisible hand. Her eyes, once friendly, became as hard as stone. She took 2 steps toward Connie, still holding the candlestick, and her voice dropped to a dangerously calm tone. Connie, I think you're confusing your role here. You're an employee, an excellent one, I might add, but still just an employee. Decisions about what's best for these children are not your concern. Robert has given me complete freedom to handle the girls' upbringing, and I believe that clinging to the past is unhealthy. They need to move on, and I'm here to help them do just that. The girls move on by keeping what their mother left for them, not by destroying it, Connie retorted, surprised by her own courage. You have no right to do this. No right? Patricia's voice rose a notch, and she raised a perfectly drawn eyebrow. I'm the one building a future with Robert. I'm the one who's going to marry him. I'm the one who's going to be these girls' new mother. And I refuse to live in the shadow of a woman who is no longer here. This morbid obsession with the deceased Marina has to end. It's sick, it's damaging, and I will do whatever it takes to free this family from this emotional prison. Connie looked at the triplets and felt her heart shatter. Anna Louise was crying silently, tears streaming down her face as she rocked the broken doll like a baby. Anna Claire had given up on piecing together the music box and was now just staring at her own hands, lost. Anna Julia remained motionless, her eyes glazed over as she looked at the torn letters as if in shock. Connie took another step forward, placing herself between Patricia and the girls. I'm not going to let you continue with this. I'm calling Mr. Thompson right now. Patricia laughed. It was a short, dry, humorless laugh. Go ahead. He's in his room, fast asleep after the medication he took for his migraine. But when he wakes up and you tell him this little story, who do you think he's going to believe? You, the housekeeper who's been here for years, but at the end of the day is paid to clean and cook. Or me, the woman he chose to rebuild. His life with who has a degree in child psychology, who comes from a respected family, who is willing to love these children as if they were my own. The housekeeper swallowed hard. She had known Robert Thompson for a long time. He was a good man, hard-working, dedicated, but he had been lost ever since Marina passed away 3 years ago. He drowned himself in work, spent weeks traveling, came back exhausted and guilty, and when Patricia appeared 6 months ago at a charity dinner, he seemed to have found a lifeline, someone elegant, articulate, who knew exactly what to say, who filled the unbearable silence that had settled in that house. But Connie saw what Robert couldn't. She saw how Patricia treated the girls when he wasn't around, the cutting words disguised as educational advice, the disapproving glances, the way she minimized any mention of Marina, as if the woman who had built that family had never existed. The girls are going to wake up tomorrow and see all this destroyed, Connie said, her voice trembling. They'll feel even more lost. How can you do this to children who have already suffered so much? It's precisely because they've suffered that I'm doing this, Patricia replied, and there was something terrifying in the conviction of her voice. They live in the past. They're always looking at photos, hugging these old objects, crying for the mother who's gone. That's not a life, Connie. It's a prison. I'm setting them free, and one day when they're successful adults, they'll thank me for being strong enough to do what no one else had the courage to do. Connie felt sick. How could someone twist reality so much, turn cruelty into an act of love? But before she could answer, Anna Julia finally moved. The little girl rose from the floor with a frightening slowness, as if each movement required immense effort. She walked to one of the letters lying near the fireplace, picked it up carefully, smoothed the crumpled paper, and read in a low voice, almost a whisper, that echoed through the room with the force of a scream. My dearest Anna Julia, when you read this letter, you'll be a young lady. But today, as I write this, you are only 3 years old and sleeping in the next room. I want you to know that every day with you is a gift. You, your sister Anna Claire, and Anna Louise are the reason for everything. Difficult things may happen in life, my daughter, but never forget that you were loved with all the strength a mother can love. Look after each other, be strong together, and always remember me not with sadness but with the certainty that everything I did was for love. Anna Julia's voice broke at the end, and she clutched the letter to her chest. Then she turned to her sisters and said something that made Connie feel as if the floor had opened up beneath her feet. Our new mommy hates us. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Patricia seemed to lose her composure for a moment, her face paling, but she quickly regained her expression, hardened her jaw, and shrugged. You'll understand when you're older, she said coldly. Now back to bed. Connie will clean up this mess. But the girls didn't move. Anna Louise continued to hug the mangled doll. Anna Claire stared at the broken music box with a sadness so deep it seemed too old for a child her age, and Anna Julia remained standing, holding the letter as if it were the last thing tethering her to sanity. Connie made a decision in that moment. She didn't know how, she didn't know when, but she knew she had to protect those girls, because if she didn't, no one else would. Robert was blind, lost in his own pain, and the illusion that he had found an easy solution to his emptiness. The girls had no one else, only her. A simple housekeeper who earned $2,000 a month to cook, clean, and care for a house that insisted on feeling like a mausoleum. Come on, girls, Connie said, softly holding out her arms. Let's go to your room. I'll stay with you until you can fall asleep. Anna Julia looked at Patricia one last time, and in that childish gaze was something Connie never expected to see in a child so young. There was understanding. The terrible understanding that the world wasn't fair, that not all adults could be trusted, that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the very ones who hurt you the most. The 3 girls walked slowly to Connie, who wrapped them in a group hug, trying with the warmth of her body to warm those souls chilled by what they had just witnessed. She led them down the hall, and as they passed through the door, Connie looked back one last time. Patricia stood there, in the middle of the wreckage, the candlestick still in her hand, illuminated by the blinking lights of the Christmas tree. And there was a satisfied smile on her lips, the smile of someone who had just won a battle. But Connie Miller, born and raised in rural Ohio, daughter of a laundress and granddaughter of a midwife, a woman who had learned early on that not all power comes from money or a formal education, swore to herself that this would be Patricia Morgan's first and last victory in that house. The war, after all, was just beginning. Dawn arrived timidly at the Thompson mansion, as if even the sun hesitated to illuminate what had happened in the early hours. Connie hadn't been able to sleep. She had stayed in the triplets' room until exhaustion finally claimed them around 5 in the morning, after hours of rocking each one, wiping away tears and whispering promises that everything would be okay. Even without being sure, she could keep them. Anna Louise had slept clutching the broken doll, refusing to let it go even in deep sleep. Anna Claire had fallen asleep with her hand closed around the pieces of the music box, and Anna Julia, always the most reserved, had asked to sleep with her mother's letter under her pillow, as if those words could protect her from nightmares. Now, at 7 in the morning, Connie was in the kitchen making coffee while listening to the sounds of the house waking up. She knew Robert would be down soon, as he always was, punctual as a Swiss watch, impeccably dressed in one of the dark suits he wore to his office in downtown Manhattan, where he ran one of the country's largest business consulting firms. Robert Thompson was 43, but he seemed to carry the weight of 2 lifetimes on his shoulders. Since Marina was gone, he had become a man who operated on autopilot, fulfilling obligations, signing contracts, closing deals, but living like someone who was merely surviving. Connie saw the pain in his always tired brown eyes, saw the way he avoided looking at the photos of Marina that still adorned some corners of the house, saw how he took refuge in work to avoid facing the emptiness that inhabited his own home. And then Patricia had appeared. During a charity event organized by a client, she had introduced herself as a psychologist, specializing in childhood grief, said she was interested in volunteer work, and had been charming, attentive, and elegant. Robert, exhausted from trying to be both father and mother, saw in her a chance for relief. Someone who understood children, who could help him deal with the daughters he loved but no longer knew how to reach. The relationship had progressed too, quickly, Connie thought as she took the fresh bread out of the bakery bag. Too quickly to be natural. In 3 months, Patricia was already having dinner at the house twice a week. In 4, she was spending entire weekends. In 6 months, Robert had proposed, and she had accepted with tears in her eyes and a smile that Connie could never decipher as genuine joy or calculated victory. Robert's firm footsteps on the stairs pulled her from her thoughts. He entered the kitchen already on his phone, his brow furrowed as he stared at the screen, absorbed in spreadsheets, or reports that Connie would never understand. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," she greeted, pouring coffee into the porcelain cup he preferred. "Morning, Connie," he replied without looking up. "How are the girls?" It was always the same question, asked with the same generic concern like someone asking about the weather. Connie took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Mr. Thompson, I need to talk to you about something serious." He finally raised his gaze, and Connie saw the poorly disguised irritation in his eyes. Robert didn't like problems in the morning, especially before coffee. "Go on, but please, be brief. I have a meeting at 8:30. "It's about Ms. Morgan and the girls," Connie began, choosing each word carefully. "Something happened last night that you need to know about." She told him everything. The destruction of the gifts, the torn letters, the broken doll, the music box in pieces. She told him about the triplets' tears, about Patricia's coldness, about the absurd justification that she was freeing the children from the past. Connie spoke with a trembling but firm voice, hoping that Robert would finally see what she had been trying to show him for months. When she finished, the silence in the kitchen was as thick as fog. Robert placed his coffee cup on the counter with excessive care, and Connie saw the muscle in his jaw clench. "Connie," he said finally, his voice low and far too controlled, "I know you're very attached to the girls, and I appreciate that, I really do. But Patricia is a psychologist. She studied for this. Maybe her methods are different from what we're used to, but she knows what she's doing." Connie felt the floor give way beneath her. "No, Mr. Thompson, you don't understand. She destroyed Marina's memories, things their mother left for them. That's not a method, it's cruelty." Robert ran a hand over his face, and Connie realized he was even more exhausted than she had imagined. "You think I don't know it's hard for them?" "I do, Connie. I see it every day. But clinging to the past doesn't help either. Marina is gone. She's not coming back. And the longer we spend looking back, the harder it will be to move forward." "But erasing her memory isn't moving forward. It's pretending she never existed," Connie protested, feeling tears of frustration burn her eyes. "It's not erasing," Robert corrected, his voice hardening. "It's allowing scars to form. You don't understand, Connie, because you haven't lost a spouse. You don't know what it's like to wake up every day and feel like a part of you has been ripped out. Patricia is helping me rebuild this family. The girls will adapt. Children are resilient." Connie wanted to scream that resilience wasn't a synonym for forgetting, that children could be strong but were also fragile, that healing didn't mean erasing. But before she could respond, Patricia entered the kitchen. She was stunning, as always. A white linen dress, her hair in an elegant bun, light but flawless makeup. She smiled when she saw Robert and went to him, kissing him lightly on the lips before turning to Connie. "Good morning, Connie. I hope you slept well after that situation last night." The way she said it, with feigned concern, made Connie clench her fists. Robert looked from one to the other, confused. "What situation?" Patricia sighed dramatically. "The girls had an emotional breakdown last night. They woke up crying, wanting Marina's old toys. Unfortunately, I had to intervene. Some things needed to be thrown out, Robert. They were broken, old, collecting dust and unhealthy memories. I tried to explain it to the girls gently, but you know how dramatic they can be. Connie helped me calm them down, didn't you, Connie? Connie was paralyzed. The reversal was so absurd, so blatant, that for a moment she didn't even know how to react. Patricia was rewriting history right in front of her, turning destruction into care, cruelty into tough love. "That's not what happened," Connie managed to say, her voice coming out weaker than she'd hoped. "You destroyed the gifts on purpose, I saw you." Patricia tilted, her head with a pitying expression. "Honey, I know you're tired. You were up all night, you must be confused, it's understandable. Why don't you take the morning off? I'll handle the girls' breakfast today." Robert looked at Connie with an expression she had learned to hate, the expression of someone choosing who to believe and already knowing the answer before even thinking. "I think that's a good idea, Connie. You look exhausted. Get some rest." It was an order disguised as a suggestion. Connie understood that insisting now would only make things worse. Patricia had won again, using the most powerful weapon she had, Robert's blind trust. "Yes, sir," Connie murmured, and left the kitchen on shaky legs. In the days that followed, Connie began to watch Patricia with renewed attention, not just watching, but studying. Every gesture, every word, every look. And the more she watched, the more strange things she noticed. Patricia spent hours in Robert's office when he was away, going through papers. She said she was organizing documents, but Connie had seen her more than once taking pictures of papers with her phone. Patricia asked detailed questions about the family's finances, about investments, about properties, always casually, always disguised as a loving interest in getting to know her fiancé's life better. But what caught Connie's attention the most was a phone call she overheard by chance while cleaning the hallway near the guest room, where Patricia sometimes locked herself away. "Yes, he signed the power of attorney yesterday," Patricia said in a low voice. "He trusts me completely. The brats are a problem, but I'm handling it bit by bit. After the wedding, it'll be easier." A chill ran down Connie's spine. Brats. That's what Patricia called the girls when she thought no one was listening. And the mention of a power of attorney alarmed her. What had Robert signed? She needed more information. But how could she get it without being discovered? Connie wasn't an investigator. She was just a simple woman who had worked her whole life in family homes. But her love for those three girls, whom she had practically raised since they were babies, was stronger than her fear. So she started paying attention to small details. She noted the times Patricia left and returned, watched who she talked to, memorized names she heard in phone conversations. It seemed crazy, but Connie was absolutely certain that something was deeply wrong. If you were in Connie's shoes, would you keep investigating even at the risk of being fired, or would you let it go to keep your job? Tell us in the comments. One afternoon, while the girls were at school and Robert was on a business trip, Connie found a folder left on the office desk. She didn't usually touch anything in that room, respecting Robert's privacy, but the folder's cover caught her eye. It had the name of a law firm specializing in estate law printed in silver letters. She looked around. The house was silent. Patricia had said she was going shopping and wouldn't be back until late afternoon. It was risky, but it might be her only chance. With trembling hands, Connie opened the folder and began to leaf through the documents. There were many papers with legal terms she barely understood. Property regimes, community property, estate inventory, distribution. The words danced before her, confusing and intimidating. But then she found something even she could understand. It was a document stating that if anything happened to Robert after the marriage, Patricia would have full guardianship of the girls and total administration of all assets until the triplets turned 21. And there was a strange clause that mentioned the possibility of committing the minors to specialized institutions if deemed necessary for their psychological well-being. Connie's blood ran cold. This wasn't right. Robert would never agree to give such broad powers to someone he had known for such a short time, especially something that involved the possibility of separating him from his daughters. She kept flipping and found more disturbing things. A list of Robert's properties with estimated values next to them, detailed financial reports, and, at the bottom of the folder, a series of printouts from web pages, old news articles. Connie picked up the pages and started to read. Each line made her heart beat faster. They were reports on cases of marriage fraud, wealthy men who married women who later revealed ulterior motives. One case specifically mentioned a psychologist who had approached vulnerable widowers. And then she saw it. A small photo, 5 years old, from a Stamford, Connecticut newspaper. The woman in the photo was younger, had darker hair, but the eyes were unmistakable. It was Patricia, and the name was different. Patricia Regina Santos, not Patricia Morgan, as she now called herself. The article talked about an investigation into a case where a woman had approached a widowed businessman, gained his trust, had him sign financial documents, and then disappeared with a significant amount of money. The case was still ongoing when the article was published, and the woman was considered a fugitive. Connie had to sit down. Her legs wouldn't support her anymore. It all made sense now. The rush to get married, the interest in finances, the need to erase Marina from the girls' lives, not for their well-being, but because children attached to their mother's memory would be harder to manipulate, more likely to question the presence of a stranger taking their mother's place. But who would believe her? Robert was blind with love and exhaustion. Patricia was convincing, articulate, and knew exactly how to present herself. And Connie was just the housekeeper, with no proof other than a folder she shouldn't have been touching. She was taking pictures of the pages with her old phone, which she barely knew how to use, when she heard the front door open. The blood drained from her face. Patricia was back early. Connie threw the papers back into the folder as neatly as she could with her shaking hands, put everything back on the desk, and ran out of the office. She reached the kitchen, breathless, pretending to be busy with dinner preparations when Patricia walked in. "Connie, what a coincidence finding you here," Patricia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I thought you were at the grocery store." "I changed my mind," Connie replied, trying to control her voice. "We have everything we need right here." Patricia studied her for a long moment, and Connie was absolutely certain that she knew. She knew Connie had discovered something. She knew the game had changed, and the worst part was Patricia seemed almost pleased by it. "You know, Connie," she began, taking an apple from the fruit bowl and biting into it delicately, "I've been thinking a lot about the future of this house, about how things will change after Robert and I get married. We've already talked about it, actually. He agrees that it might be time to modernize some aspects of the domestic routine." Connie swallowed hard. "What exactly do you mean?" "Well, you've been with us for so long, 15 years, isn't it? You must be tired. Robert suggested that it might be fair to think about your retirement, with a good severance package, of course. You could go back to Ohio, be close to your family. Your sister still lives there, doesn't she?" The mention of her sister made Connie freeze. Her younger sister, Lucy, lived in a small town back home, taking care of their ailing mother by herself. Connie sent money every month to help with medication and doctor's appointments. That was why she put up with so much, why she bit her tongue when she saw injustice, because losing this job would mean abandoning her mother and sister. And Patricia knew it. She knew exactly where to strike. "I'm not tired," Connie replied, lifting her chin, "and I don't plan on leaving as long as the girls need me." Patricia's smile widened, but it was a cold, dangerous smile. Such admirable dedication. "But you see, Connie, sometimes people don't know what's best for them. Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions. For example, you know your mother is sick, right? It would be terrible if something happened and you couldn't be there to help, or worse, if the resources for her treatment suddenly became scarce. It was a clear threat, disguised as concern, but unequivocally a threat. Connie felt anger and fear mix in her chest. Patricia wasn't just trying to push her away from the girls. She was using her family as a hostage. In that moment, looking at the woman who had become her enemy, Connie made the most important decision of her life. She wouldn't leave. She wouldn't give up. Even if it meant risking everything, she would find a way to expose Patricia, to protect the 3 little girls she loved as if they were her own daughters. Because in the end, some battles are worth every risk, and this was certainly one of them. The following weeks were the hardest of Connie's life. She lived in a constant state of alert, sleeping poorly, eating little, watching Patricia's every move while pretending everything was normal. The photos she had managed to take of the documents were saved on her phone, but she didn't know what to do with them. Show them to Robert. He wouldn't believe her. Go to the police. She wasn't sure if it was enough for a formal investigation. Meanwhile, life in the Thompson mansion continued its superficially normal routine, but there was a tension in the air that even the walls seemed to feel. The triplets were quieter, more withdrawn. Anna Louise barely spoke anymore, spending hours sitting in her room staring at the broken doll that Connie had tried to fix with a needle and thread, but which would never be the same. Anna Claire had stopped smiling, that wide, spontaneous smile that used to light up the house. And Anna Julia had developed a habit of waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares always, asking if the new mommy was going to make her sisters disappear too. Connie did what she could. She hugged, comforted, made up stories to distract them, and cooked their favorite meals. But she knew it wasn't enough. Those girls were fading, like candles exposed to a wind that was too strong. Robert, for his part, seemed increasingly distant. Patricia had done a masterful job of isolating him emotionally. She always had a suggestion, a comment, an observation that planted seeds of doubt. She said the girls were manipulating the situation, using their mother's memory to get attention. She suggested they might need intensive therapy, perhaps even some time at a specialized clinic where truly qualified professionals could help them process their grief in a healthy way. And Robert, exhausted from fighting his own pain, was beginning to consider these possibilities as reasonable. Connie saw the trap closing and felt powerless to stop it. It was on a rainy Thursday that things began to change. Connie was at the grocery store when she bumped into someone she hadn't seen in years. Father Michael, the priest from the church the Thompson family used to attend when Marina was still alive. "Connie, what a surprise," said the priest, a man with grey hair and kind eyes. "It's been a while since I've seen you all at Mass." "How are the girls?" Connie felt her throat tighten. Here was someone who had known Marina, who had baptized the triplets, who had been with the family through their toughest times. And suddenly she realized she wasn't alone. There were people who cared, who might help if they knew what was happening. "They're not well, Father," Connie admitted, and before she could stop herself, she started crying right there in the middle of the supermarket aisle between the shelves of rice and beans. The priest took her to the food court, sat with her and listened. He listened to everything: Patricia's arrival, the destruction of the gifts, the emotional manipulation, the veiled threats, the discoveries about her past. Connie spoke without stopping, as if a dam had broken inside her, and all the anguish of the past weeks came pouring out at once. When she finished, the priest was silent for a long moment, processing everything he had heard. Finally, he spoke. "Connie, you did the right thing by telling me. This is very serious. But I need you to understand something. You can't face this alone. This isn't just a matter of faith or courage, it's a legal matter too. This woman is dangerous, and if she really has a criminal history, you need professional help." "But how, Father? Mr. Thompson doesn't believe me. He thinks I'm making things up, that I'm just a housekeeper jealous of the attention he's giving another woman." The priest thought for a moment before answering. "I have a friend, a lawyer who does a lot of pro bono work helping people in vulnerable situations. He also has contacts in the police department, serious people who could investigate this Patricia properly. Can I speak with him?" Connie felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. "But what if she finds out? What if she hurts the girls, or my family?" "That's exactly why you need legal help, Connie. To protect everyone, trust in God and trust in good people. They still exist." In the following days, Connie met discreetly with the lawyer Father Michael had recommended. Mr. Henry Davis was a man in his 50s with a simple appearance, but a sharp gaze. He analyzed the photos of the documents Connie showed him, asked detailed questions and took notes. "This is enough for us to start a preliminary investigation," he said finally. "I'll pass this information to a contact of mine at the NYPD, someone I trust. They'll check if this Patricia Morgan or Patricia Regina Santos has a criminal record, if there are any open cases, if there are other similar incidents." "How long will that take?" Connie asked anxiously. A few weeks, maybe a month. But I need you to understand, Mrs. Miller, that until we have concrete, irrefutable proof, you cannot confront her directly. These people are very skilled at playing the victim, at turning situations around. We need to be strategic. But the wedding is set for 2 months from now, Connie protested. If she marries Mr. Thompson, it will be much harder to do anything. Mr. Davis nodded gravely. I know. We'll work quickly, but you have to promise me you'll be patient and that you won't do anything on your own that could put you in danger or compromise our investigation. Connie promised, even though she felt that every day of waiting was an eternity. She returned to the mansion with a mix of hope and fear. She had help now, but she was also aware that she had crossed a line from which there was no return. Patricia, however, seemed to sense that something had changed. She became even more vigilant, even more controlling. She started suggesting that Connie take a few days off, that she visit her family in Ohio. She made seemingly innocent comments about how Connie's mother needed her, how it would be selfish to prioritize other people's children over her own family. But Connie resisted, made excuses, said her sister was managing, that she preferred to stay. And each refusal made Patricia a little more irritated, a little less careful about hiding her true nature. It was one afternoon that everything almost fell apart. Connie was ironing in the laundry room when she heard screams coming from the girls' room. She dropped everything and ran, her heart pounding, fearing the worst. The scene she found made her stop at the door. Patricia was in the triplets' room, and they were cornered against the wall, all three huddled together, clinging to each other. Patricia was holding a photo album, the one Marina had made with so much love, documenting every important moment of her daughters' lives since birth. This ends now, Patricia was saying, her voice loud and furious, the mask of kindness finally gone. You live in this pathetic past, crying over a woman who abandoned you. Yes, abandoned you. She knew she was sick and still chose to have the three of you. It was pure selfishness on her part. And now I have to deal with the consequences of that irresponsibility. The girls were crying, but it was a silent, terrifying cry, the cry of those who no longer have the strength to scream. Anna Julia tried to speak. Our mommy didn't abandon us. She didn't choose to get sick. Don't talk back to me, Patricia hissed, taking a threatening step toward them. You are spoiled children who understand nothing about life, but you're going to learn. After I marry your father, we're going to make some serious changes around here. Maybe it would be best for each of you to go to a different school, to learn to be independent, or maybe a boarding school, far away from here. It was at that moment that Connie walked in. Enough, she said, her voice firmer than ever. You've crossed every line. Patricia spun around and the hatred in her eyes was palpable. Ah, the heroic housekeeper again. Don't you ever get tired of sticking your nose where it doesn't belong? I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who won't stand by and watch children be abused. Abused? Patricia laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. These children have everything. A house, food, private school, designer clothes. They don't know what real suffering is. They have everything except what they need most, Connie retorted. Respect, true love, and the right to remember their own mother. The argument was escalating dangerously when Robert came home early. He heard the raised voices and ran upstairs. When he entered the room, he found Patricia holding the album, the girls crying in a corner, and Connie standing between them and his fiancée. What is going on in here? He asked, his voice heavy with exhaustion and confusion. Patricia's expression changed instantly, as if she had flipped a switch. Her eyes filled with tears, her voice trembled. Robert, thank God you're here. I was just trying to talk to the girls about the importance of being open to the future, and Connie started verbally attacking me. She said horrible things in front of them. Connie felt the world spin. The reversal was so perfect, so convincing, that for a moment she doubted her own memory. But then she looked at the triplets, saw the desperation in their little eyes, and knew she couldn't back down. That's not what happened, she said, looking directly at Robert. Ms. Morgan was threatening to separate the girls, to send them to different boarding schools, saying their mother abandoned them. I heard everything. Robert looked at his daughters. Girls, what happened? Anna Julia opened her mouth to speak, but Patricia cut her off. They're confused, Robert. You know how children have a hard time processing difficult conversations about change and growth. I simply said that maybe in the future, when they're older, they could have experiences like summer camp or exchange programs, and Connie twisted everything. Robert ran a hand through his hair, torn between the two versions. Connie realized she was losing. Patricia's words were always more polished, more rational, more believable to someone who desperately wanted to believe them. It was then that Anna Louise did something no one expected. She let go of her sisters, walked to her father and tugged on his pant leg. In a tiny but determined voice, she said, "Daddy, she's lying. She said Mommy was selfish. She said we're spoiled. And she said she's going to send us away." Robert knelt down to his daughter's level, and Connie saw something break in his face. It was as if finally, after months of denial, he was waking up from a bad dream. "Patricia, is that true?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "Of course not, honey. Are you going to believe children who have been manipulated against me?" Patricia said, but there was a hint of desperation in her voice now. Robert stood up, took the album from her hands, and gave it to Anna Julia. "Girls, go to Connie's room, now." The triplets ran to Connie, who wrapped them in her arms and led them out, but not before she heard Robert say, "I think we need to have a serious talk, Patricia, about a lot of things." That night, Connie stayed with the girls in her little room, the four of them squeezed into the single bed, but feeling safer than they had in weeks. The triplets finally fell asleep, emotionally exhausted, while Connie lay awake, praying that Robert would finally see the truth before it was too late. She didn't know it yet, but Mr. Davis's investigation was about to reveal something far more serious than she had imagined, and when the truth came out, it would be explosive enough to change everything. Connie looked at the three little girls sleeping, their faces finally peaceful, and made a silent promise. No matter what happened, no matter the price she had to pay, she would protect these children to the very end, because some fights aren't choices. They are calls that life makes to us, and to refuse them would be to betray everything that truly matters. And Connie Miller had never been one to betray those she loved. 3 days passed since the incident in the girls' room, and the tension in the Thompson mansion was so thick you could almost touch it. Patricia was barely around, claiming urgent meetings and unavoidable commitments. Robert was quieter than usual, thoughtful, and Connie could tell that something had changed in him, as if a crack of doubt had finally opened in his mind. The triplets, for their part, stuck close to Connie like shadows, afraid that if they moved away, something terrible would happen again. They went back to sleeping in her little room, the four of them crammed into the small bed, but none of them complained. There they felt safe. It was on a Friday morning that everything changed for good. Connie was making breakfast when the doorbell rang. She went to answer it and found Mr. Davis, accompanied by a man who introduced himself as Detective Carter of the NYPD. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," Mr. Davis said, his expression serious. "We need to speak with Mr. Robert Thompson urgently. It's about the investigation." Connie's heart pounded. "Please come in. Mr. Thompson is in his office." Robert looked up, surprised, when Connie appeared with the two men. "Mr. Davis, what are you doing here?" The lawyer glanced at Connie, who nodded, giving him permission to tell him everything. "Mr. Thompson, I know this is going to be difficult to hear, but we ask that you listen carefully. This is a very serious matter concerning Ms. Patricia Morgan." For the next 2 hours, Robert listened in silence as Detective Carter presented the findings of the investigation. Patricia was not who she claimed to be. Her real name was Patricia Regina Santos, and she had an extensive history of marriage fraud. Over the past 10 years, she had approached at least 7 widowed or divorced men, always following the same pattern. She would gain their trust, emotionally isolate them from their children and family, obtain power of attorney and access to bank accounts, and then disappear with significant amounts of money. In 2 cases, the family's children were committed to psychiatric institutions under the pretext of severe emotional problems, making it easier to manipulate the vulnerable fathers. In 1 case, she had even married, but the marriage was annulled when it was discovered she had forged documents. "There's an outstanding warrant for her arrest in Stamford, Connecticut," the detective continued, but she changed her identity, altered her appearance, and has been operating in New York for the past few months. When Mrs. Miller came to us through Mr. Davis and showed us the photos of the documents, we were able to make the connection. Robert was pale, his hands trembling on the desk. How did I not see it? How could I have been so blind? She's very good at what she does, Mr. Thompson, the detective said gently. These people study their victims. They know exactly how to act. You were vulnerable, grieving, with 3 young daughters to raise alone. She identified that and exploited it. The power of attorney I signed, Robert murmured, putting his hands to his face. The bank authorizations. My God, she has access to almost everything. That's why we came immediately, said Mr. Davis. We need to act fast. We've already contacted your bank to block her access, but we need you to file a formal police report and revoke all powers of attorney. And the girls, Robert whispered, his voice breaking. She threatened my daughters, said she was going to separate them. How could I have put my own children in danger like that? Connie, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. You were trying to survive, Mr. Thompson. Don't blame yourself for being human. The important thing is that now you know the truth, and you can protect the girls. Robert looked at her, and Connie saw tears in the eyes of the strong man, who had always seemed unshakable. You tried to warn me from the beginning. You tried to make me see, and I wouldn't listen. I called you jealous, meddlesome. How can you forgive me? I already have, Mr. Thompson. What matters now is fixing things. The detective stood up. We'll need to arrest her when she returns. Would it be possible for you to call her, tell her you need to talk urgently? The more natural the situation, the better. Robert picked up his phone with trembling hands and made the call. Patricia answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sweet and concerned. Honey, is everything okay? I was just on my way over. I need you to come now, Patricia, Robert said, trying to keep his voice steady. It's urgent, about the wedding. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Did something happen? Just come, please. 40 minutes later, Patricia entered the mansion using her key. She was as elegant as ever, wearing a white suit that made her look angelic. She smiled when she saw Robert in the living room, but the smile died when she saw the detective and the lawyer. Robert, what's going on? She asked, but Connie could see the calculation in her eyes, her mind working quickly to find a way out. Patricia Regina Santos, Detective Carter said, standing up and showing his badge. You are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Connie watched the transformation happen before her eyes. The mask fell away completely. Patricia didn't try to deny it, didn't feign surprise or innocence. Instead, she looked at Robert with a contempt so profound it was almost palpable. You're pathetic, she said, her voice cold. Whimpering over your dead little wife, unable to take care of your own daughters. It was so easy to manipulate you, so desperately easy. All I had to do was pretend I cared, say the right words, and you handed me everything on a silver platter. Shut up, Robert said, his voice filled with a rage Connie had never heard from him. Don't talk about Marina. Don't talk about my daughters. You're not worthy of even saying their names. Your little brats, Patricia shot back with venom. Those spoiled children who are always crying for their mother. They were the only real obstacle, in my way. That's why they had to go. First their mother's memory, then them. A boarding school here, another one there, and just like that, you would have been completely alone and dependent on me. Connie felt sick. It was worse than she had imagined. Patricia had truly planned to systematically destroy this family. The detective gave a signal, and 2 officers who had been waiting outside came in and handcuffed Patricia. She didn't resist, but she looked at Connie with pure hatred. You, she hissed, the meddling little housekeeper. I should have gotten rid of you from the start. But you didn't, Connie replied calmly, because you underestimated a mother's love for her children. I may not have given birth to them, but I love those girls as if they were my own. And there's no amount of money, lies, or manipulation in the world that's stronger than that. Patricia was led away, shouting protests and threats, and when the door closed behind her, the silence that remained was different from the heavy silence of the past few months. It was the silence of someone who can finally breathe. Robert turned to Connie and there were so many emotions on his face she couldn't identify them all. Gratitude, shame, regret, relief. How can I thank you? How can I ever make up for what you've done? Connie shook her head. You don't have to thank me, Mr. Thompson. But you do have to do something for the girls. You need to be present. Truly present, not just with money or material comfort, but with time, attention, love. They lost their mother. They can't lose their father too. Robert nodded, tears finally streaming down his face. I will, I promise. I'm going to take time off work. I'm going to relearn how to be a father. I'm going to honor Marina's memory by being the man she believed I was. That night, Robert sat with his 3 daughters and talked. Really talked, for the first time in a long time. He apologized for being distant, for not seeing their suffering, for almost allowing a stranger to erase the memory of the mother who had loved them so much. The girls cried, but they were tears of relief. Anna Louise asked if they could put pictures of Mommy back on the wall. Anna Claire asked if she could keep the broken music box in her room. Anna Julia asked if her father could read their mother's letters with them so they could better understand who Marina was. Robert said yes to everything. He said yes, and cried with them, hugged them, and promised that he would never again let anyone try to erase their history. The months that followed were a time of rebuilding. It wasn't easy or quick. Robert had to relearn how to balance work and family, how to be present not just physically but emotionally. The girls had to relearn how to trust that their father wouldn't abandon them again. Connie remained there, but now in a different role. She was no longer just the employee. She was part of the family, recognized and loved as such. Robert adjusted her salary, sorted out all the labor rights that had been previously neglected, and most importantly, began to consult her on decisions involving the girls, acknowledging that she knew them as well as he did, sometimes even better. The house changed. Photos of Marina returned to the walls, not as shrines of pain, but as celebrations of a life that mattered. Anna Louise's doll, though patched and imperfect, was given a place of honor on her bedroom shelf. Anna Claire's music box was sent to a specialist for repair, and even if it never played perfectly again, the flawed sound was beautiful in its own way. Anna Julia's letters were framed, one by one, waiting for the future birthdays when they would be opened and read aloud, keeping their mother alive through her words. Patricia was sentenced to 8 years in prison, combining all the crimes she was charged with. The other families she had harmed found some solace in knowing that justice had been served, however late. Robert learned in the most painful way possible that professional success means nothing if you lose the ones you love most in the process. He started working less, being present for school plays, birthdays, and simple everyday moments. He discovered that his daughters loved him not for what he provided materially, but for who he chose to be when he was with them. The triplets, in turn, began to heal. The trauma didn't disappear overnight, but with proper therapy, genuine love, and the certainty that their story would not be erased, they started to smile again, to play, to dream. A year after the day Patricia was arrested, the family held a small ceremony in the backyard. They planted a tree in memory of Marina, and beneath it, they buried a box with letters that each of the girls had written to their mother, telling her about who they were becoming, about their dreams, about how they loved her and always would. Connie was there, of course, because where else would she be but beside the girls who were the daughters of her heart? And as she watched Robert hug Anna Louise, Anna Claire, and Anna Julia under the shade of that young tree that had so much growing to do, she understood something fundamental. True love isn't what tries to erase or replace. It's what remains, what honors, what protects. It's what chooses to stay when it would be so much easier to leave. It's what fights for those who cannot fight for themselves. On that sunny day, with butterflies dancing among the garden flowers, Connie Miller knew she had made the right choices. She had risked everything, her job, her security, even the well-being of her own family, to protect 3 little girls that fate had placed in her path. And looking at their faces, finally at peace, finally able to be children again, she knew it had been worth every second of fear, every sleepless night, every tear she had shed. Because in the end, the story wasn't about villains and heroes. It was about choices. about staying when the whole world tells you to leave, about believing that what is right is worth fighting for, even when no one else believes in you, about understanding that family isn't just about who shares your blood, but about who chooses to love unconditionally, to protect without expecting anything in return, and to honor memories instead of erasing them. Anna Louise, Anna Claire, and Anna Julia would grow up knowing they had a mother who loved them unconditionally, and that even after she was gone, that love lived on through the people who chose to honor her memory. And they would also grow up knowing they had a second mother, not the one who tried to destroy their past, but the one who fought to preserve it. A simple woman, with no degrees or important last names, but with a heart big enough to embrace 3 frightened little girls and promise them that they would never ever be alone. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Connie, Robert, and the triplets Anna Louise, Anna Claire, and Anna Julia has touched your heart. If you were moved, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what part of this story resonated with you the most. Would you have stood by the children like Connie did, or would you have been too afraid to act? Every day we bring you intense stories like this one, revealing the deepest side of the human soul. The difficult choices that shape our character, and the transformative power of true love. We'll see you in the next episode with another story that will make you reflect on what truly matters in life.